Other new business, we have some information in your packet going through FOIL procedures. Right now, we've worked with TRK, our own legal counsel, as well as the Committee on Open Government to go ahead and comply and get some good FOIL procedures and policies to adopt for the town of Westerlo. And that way everyone has something to follow as far as FOIL procedures go. So I'll go ahead and I'll read this. It's pretty long-winded, but that way we can go ahead and adopt it. Covered in lots of good legalese and in compliance with the Committee on Open Government. So once again, this is a resolution of the Town of Westerlo Town Board, and I'll go ahead and I'll read it to you. So I, Councilmember Matthew Kryzak, offer the following resolution and move to its adoption. Whereas the Town of Westerlo recognizes that in accordance with New York State Public Officers Law 87 and the Federal Freedom of Information Act, the Town of Westerlo must implement procedures and regulations that govern public requests for information. And whereas the Town of Westerlo has had an opportunity to review the current town operating procedures and regulations and has determined that it is necessary for the Town of Westerlo to formally implement procedures and regulations that govern public requests for information pursuant to New York State Public Officers Law 87 and Freedom of Information Act. Now therefore be it resolved that the following procedures and regulations shall govern public interest for information pursuant to New York State Public Officers Law 87 and Freedom of Information Act in the Town of Westerlo. Section 1, Purpose and Scope. The people's right to know the process of government decision-making and the documents and statistics leading to determinations is basic to our society. Access to such information should not be thwarted by shrouding it in the cloak of secrecy and confidentiality. 2, the regulations provided these regulations provided information concerning the procedures by which records may be obtained. 3, the Town of Westerlo shall furnish to the public the information and records required by the Freedom of Information Act, as well as records otherwise available by law. Any conflicts among laws governing public access to the records shall be construed in favor of the widest possibility available of public records. Section 2, Designation of Records Access Officer. The Town of Westerlo is responsible for ensuring compliance with the regulations herein and shall designate a Records Access Officer. 2, the Records Access Officer shall be responsible for ensuring appropriate response to public records for access to records. 3, the Records Access Officer shall ensure that the Town of Westerlo personnel A, maintain an up-to-date subject matter list, B, assist persons seeking records to identify the records sought, if necessary and when appropriate, indicate the manner in which the records are filed, retrieved, or generated to assist persons in reasonably describing records. C, contact persons seeking records when a request is voluminous or when locating the records involves substantial effort so that personnel may ascertain the nature of records of primary interest and attempt to reasonably reduce the volume of records requested. D, upon locating the records, take one of the following actions. 1, make records available for inspection, or 2, deny access to the records in whole or in part and explaining in writing the reasons thereof. E, upon request for copies of records, 1, make a copy available upon payment or offer to pay established fees, if any, in accordance with Section 8, or 2, permit the requester to copy those records. F, upon request, certify that a record is a true copy, and G, upon failure to locate records, certify that 1, the Town of Westerlo is not the custodian of such records, or 2, the records of which the Town of Westerlo is a custodian cannot be found after a diligent search. Records shall be available for public inspection and copying at the Town of Westerlo Town Hall, 933 County Route 401, Westerlo, New York 12193. Section 4, hours for public inspection. 1, requests for public access to records shall be accepted and records reasonably produced during all hours regularly open for business. These hours may change, and they are presently Monday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Thursday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Friday closed, Saturday closed, and Sunday closed. Section 5, request for public access to records. 1, written requests for records shall be required. Written requests may be submitted by traditional hard copies or by electronic means. 2, if records are maintained on the internet, the requester shall be informed that the records are accessible via the internet and in printed form, either on paper or for other information storage medium. 3, a response shall be given within 5 business days of receipt of a request by A, informing the person requesting records that the request or portion of the request does not reasonably describe the record sought, including direction to the extent possible that would enable that person to request records reasonably described. B, granting or denying access to records in whole or in part. C, acknowledging the receipt of a request in writing, including an approximate date when the request will be granted or denied in whole or in part, which shall be reasonable under the circumstances of the request and shall not be more than 20 business days after the date of the acknowledgement, or if it is known that circumstances prevent disclosure within 20 business days from the date of such acknowledgement, providing a statement in writing indicating the reason for the inability to grant the request within that time and date, and certain with a reasonable period under the circumstances of the request when the request will be granted in whole or in part. 4, in determining a reasonable time for granting or denying a request under the circumstances of a request, the records access officer shall consider the volume of the request, the ease or difficulty in locating, retrieving, or generating records, the complexity of the request, the need to review records to determine the extent to which they must be disclosed, the number of requests received by the town of Westerlo, and other similar factors that bear on the ability to grant access to records promptly and within reasonable time. The failure to comply with time limitations described herein shall constitute a denial of a request that may be appealed. Such failure shall include situations in which the records access officer A, fails to grant access to the records sought, denies access in writing, or fails to acknowledge the receipt of a request within 5 business days of the receipt of the request, and B, acknowledges the receipt of a request within 5 business days but fails to furnish an approximate date when the request will be granted or denied in whole or in part, and C, furnished an acknowledgement of the receipt of a request within 5 business days with an approximate date for granting or denying access in whole or in part that is unreasonable under the circumstances of request, and D, fails to respond to a request within a reasonable time after the appropriate date given or within 20 business days after the date of acknowledgement of the receipt of request. E, determines to grant requests in whole or part within 20 business days of the acknowledgement of the receipt of request, but fails to do so unless the town of Westerlo provides the reason for its inability to do so in writing and date, and certain which requests will be granted in part or in whole. F, does not grant a request in whole or in part within 20 business days of the acknowledgement of the receipt of a request, and it fails to provide the reason in writing explaining the inability to do so in a date certain by which the request will be granted in whole or in part. Or G, responds to a request stating that more than 20 business days is needed to grant or deny the request in whole or in part, and provides a date certain within which will be accomplished, but such date is unreasonable under the circumstances of request. Section 6, the subject matter list. So the records access, 1, the records access officer shall maintain a reasonably detailed current list by subject matter of all records in the town of Westerlo's possession, whether or not the records are available pursuant to subdivision 2 of section 87 of the Public Officers Law. And 2, the subject matter list shall be sufficiently detailed to permit identification of the category of the record sought. 3, the subject matter list shall be updated annually. The most recent update shall appear on the first page of the subject matter list. And 4, all town of Westerlo employees shall promptly assist in good faith the records access officer in updating and maintaining the subject matter list by promptly and with as much detail as reasonably possible, responding to the request by records access officer related to the updating and maintaining of the subject matter list, among other things reasonably required of employees by the RAO. Section 7, denial of access to records. Number 1, denial of access to records shall be in writing stating the reason, therefore, in advising the requester of the right to appeal to the town of Westerlo FOIL appeals officer, who shall be identified by name, title, business address, and business phone number. 2, if requested records are not provided promptly as required in Section 5 of these regulations, such failure shall also be deemed a denial of access. 3, any person denied to access records may appeal within 30 days of denial. And 4, the time for deciding an appeal for the town of Westerlo FOIL appeals officer shall commence upon the receipt of a written appeal identifying A, the date and location of request for records, B, a description to the extent possible of the records that were denied, and C, the name and return address of the person denied access. And 5, the failure to determine an appeal within 10 business days of its receipt by granting access to the record sought or fully explaining the reasons for further denial in writing shall constitute a denial of the appeal. 6, the person or body designated to determine appeals shall transmit to the Committee on Open Government copies of all appeals upon receipt of appeals. Such copies shall be addressed to Committee on Open Government, Department of State, 1 Commerce Plaza, 99 Washington Avenue, Suite 650, Albany, New York, 12231. 7, the Town of West Shore FOIL Appeals Officer shall inform the appellant and the Committee on Open Government of its determination in writing within 10 business days of receipt of an appeal. The determination shall be transmitted to the Committee on Open Government as set forth in subdivision 6 of this section. Section 8, fees. There shall be no charge for, or there shall be no fee charged for A, inspection of records, B, search for records, or C, any certification pursuant to this part. 2, fees for paper copies may be charged provided that A, the fee for copying records shall not exceed 25 cents per page for photocopies not exceeding 9 by 14 inches. B, the fee for photocopies of records in excess of 9 by 14 inches shall not exceed the actual cost of reproduction. Or C, the Town of West Shore redacts portions of a paper record and does so prior to disclosure of the record by making a photocopy from which the proper redactions are made. 3, the fee the Town of West Shore may charge for a copy of any other record is based on the actual cost of reproduction and may include only the following. A, an amount equal to the hourly salary attributed to the lowest paid employee who has the necessary skill to prepare a copy of the requested record, but only when more than 2 hours of the employee's time is necessary to do so. And B, the actual cost of the storage devices or media provided to the person making the request and complying with such request. Or C, the actual cost of the Town of Westerlo of engaging an outside professional service to prepare a copy of record, but only when the Town of Westerlo's information technology equipment is inadequate to prepare a copy and if such service is in fact used to prepare the copy. 4, when the Town of Westerlo has the ability to retrieve or extract a record or data maintained in a computer storage system with reasonable effort, or when doing so requires less employee time than engaging in a minimal retrieval or redactions from non-electronic records, the Town of West Shore shall be required to retrieve or extract such records or data electronically. In such case, the Town of West Shore may charge a fee in accordance with paragraph 3A and B above. 5, the Town of West Shore shall inform a person requesting a record of the estimated cost of preparing a copy of the record if more than 2 hours of a Town of West Shore employee's time is needed, or if it is necessary to retain an outside professional service to prepare a copy of record. And 6, the Town of West Shore shall require that the fee for copying or reproducing a record be paid in advance of the preparation of such copy. Section 9, public notice. 1, a notice containing the title or name and business address of the Town of West Shore Records Access Officer, the Town of West Shore FOIL Appeals Officer, and the location where records can be seen or copies can be made shall be posted in a conspicuous location wherever records are kept and or published in a local newspaper of general circulation. Section 10, severability. If any provision of these regulations or the application thereof to any person or circumstances is adjudicated invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, such judgment shall not affect or impair the validity of the other provisions of these regulations or the application thereof to the other persons and circumstances. So there you have it. The resolution that I just read was put together by our legal counsel, TRK, and also the Committee on Open Government's advice. And I'll be looking for a second to go ahead and adopt the resolution for the West Shore Town Board for the new FOIL requirements.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Either nay or
No, no.
All right. Motion carries. Next.